everybody. I'm your host, John Myers, live from Stillwater, Oklahoma. We have got a great show tonight. It's John Myers. Hey, everybody. Gotta have my notes. It's John Myers from the Kicker UnMasked studios. Gotta have my notes. Alternator. Hey, everybody. We have fun. Hey, everybody. Hit like and subscribe. Right here, right now. It's John Myers. We like to give stuff away. Alternator. Post some more pictures. We got to thank Steve and Becky live from Stillwater, Oklahoma. Don't forget Texas Roadhouse right here, right now. Hey, everybody. Don't forget right here, right now. We have got a great show tonight. Hey, everybody. Had a great dinner tonight. It's John Myers. Right here, right now. Had a great dinner tonight. So, hey, everybody. So, housekeeping. Had a great dinner tonight. So, alternator. Housekeeping. Housekeeping. So, Tuesday night. Housekeeping. From the Kicker UnMasked studios. Housekeeping. Right here, right now. Hey, everybody. So, it's John Myers. Hey, everybody. It's John Myers from the Kicker UnMasked studios. Hey, everybody. From the Kicker UnMasked studios. It's John Myers. Right here, right now. We have got a great show tonight. Hey, everybody. We have got a great show tonight. It's John Myers. Hey, everybody. Right here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here with us Tuesday night, 7:30. Anatomy of a Speaker. Now, you may have seen him on TV, Mr. John Myers, our very own John Myers. He's going to be live in the studio talking about parts of speakers. So it's going to be a super fun show. But in addition to John Myers, we also have Stephen Bambrow, who is just off screen playing with his camera right over here. You can't see him yet, but he's got the Handycam. Remember a few weeks ago when I couldn't find which camera I was talking to because he kept moving around? Well, there he is, yeah. He's got the camera that he's moving around again, so we'll have some fun with that tonight, and this time I'll know which one is on. In addition, we had JW. He stayed for dinner, and then he left. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dine and Dash? What's up with that, JW? But the reason he left is because he is driving the Kicker XRV to Lone Star Throwdown starting tomorrow morning. So he had to get out of here, so get some rest, visit with his family, and then hit the road. So thanks, JW, for dinner. Appreciate it. Have a good trip tomorrow. We also have, of course, Bill Frog. He is manning the social, and if you're a bad little boy, of course, he will, slap your wrists. Wave, Bill. Hello. Good evening, Bill. Sheriff Bill. Speaking of which, Bobby, I saw that really cool neon sign you sent to Bill. That was fantastic. Good looking sign. And of course, Ernie, you saw Ernie back there, and he is working his magic. So that is the team here in the studio tonight. So we're gonna take a 60-second break, get John set up here with all of his paraphernalia, and we'll see you in just a moment.
It's been a long road since the original Kicker christened that first pickup truck. It kicked off a car audio renaissance, and upgrading your music in a vehicle was a requirement. America's music machines became living loud over your passion, your emotion, your existence. outdoors or on the open road, your sound is Kicker.
Something bad, your hands on the wheel, got a sexy touch. It's enough to make me and my Chevy blush. So long, take it all off of that highway. Turn me on, I'll let you drive, baby. You can take it fast as you want to. Girl, little Betty looks damn good on you. Start me up, Stones on the radio. Girl, I love the way you let go. Don't waste your way in the wrong way. Get out on some 4x4 play.
Welcome back. Look who I've got with me, Mr. John Myers. John, you've been doing all sorts of crazy stuff. What's going on?
Win.
Well, John and Jacob, say it, John Jacob.
Jingleheimer Schmidt. He's not here tonight.
Actually, Jacob was going to be here, but he's working on a vehicle tonight. But so, what were you and Jacob doing last week?
Well, of course, we went to Crutchfield, spent the week there. And then coming back, we decided to have some car trouble. So that was a 22.5 hour long day.
So
followed up by 10 hours in airports and airplanes.
Now
the joy of travel, people. Try it at home.
It sounds glamorous until it's not. What's Crutchfield?
Crutchfield is, obviously, if you guys are not familiar with them, they're a mail order house. They do have a couple retail stores. Mm-hmm. They're one of our best customers, and they are loyal Kicker fans. I mean,
yes.
Those guys, you talk about Class A people to deal with. Our freight that we shipped there actually showed up Thursday before we got there. It went to the FedEx loading dock, and it sat there and didn't move. So when we showed up expecting all our stuff to be there, we had nothing. So I'd built some speaker boxes, probably 8 or 9 years ago, and we used them, and I told them, hey, throw these away. We're not going to use these anymore. They were still there, and that saved us. So we were still able to do the demos, because those guys never get to see or hear anything. They're just, facing a computer all the time. So it's very important for the guys to actually hear the product and see it, and thanks to, Jamie and Greg and everyone there, at Opus Marketing, and of course, all the people at Crutchfield, we were able to pull it off. And I bet if we would have said anything, no one would have known the difference. It worked out great.
Well, that's from years of being a professional, right?
For who?
You, man. Curveball. See, you can throw John Myers a curveball. He'll smile, eat a sandwich, and then hit it. And because he can eat that fast, too. So that was John and Jacob last week. Now, John, you're also working on another project. What's that? I'm
actually building some enclosures. If you guys are going to Master Tech, I'm going to be doing 2 seminars. Now, these seminars are not for the audio files. They're not designed for, probably a lot of you watching the show, because we've covered a lot of this stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one class on subwoofers, why you need a subwoofer enclosure, what the differences in subwoofer enclosures are, the differences in materials, what they sound like, and of course where you can put them in a vehicle. Mm-hmm. So they're really designed for, if you know Master Tech, if you guys looked at it, it's not just an audio thing. You've got car builders, you got restylers, you got upholstery guys. And for my years of dealing with even really, really high-end famous car builders, they have no idea what to do with audio. I've seen some of the best car builders do some of the worst things in the world to car audio, so it's been kind of my mission over the last 15 years or so, actually since about 2003 when I really started dealing with the TV shows and whatnot, to teach these guys the do's and don'ts. And that's going to be one class basically dedicated to how to get big bass out of any vehicle and any application. The next one's going to be, well, you've got bass, you need something else, right?
Yes.
You've got to have the mids and highs.
Got to hear the words.
Yep. So what's a coax? What's a component? Where's a proper place to put them? What's a crossover? How do you adjust it? So we're going to do a whole thing on speaker placement up front. Why you put speakers here? Why you don't put them there?
Yeah.
And then we're going to go into a whole demonstration on recording. Compression, the difference between MP3s and FLAC files, and I'm going to let the guys hear the difference. live as it switches in and out. If you've never ever experienced this, it's actually pretty impressive. You really can hear a difference. If you are playing the same song, you just cut in and out from MP3 to like a WAV file. But you play one, go do something, come back and listen to something else, you're probably not going to notice the difference. But the key is with audio, you want to give it the best chance possible. So if you've got a crappy source, guess what you're going to have? Crappy sound, right?
Can we say that?
Yeah, I just did. We didn't say the other word. But one of the things, there's a group I love that, I won't say who they are, but they've got a really, really cool song. I really like the song, but on a good system, I can't listen to it. It is recorded so bad, it's just absolute garbage. There's no dynamic range. The drums are all blurred together. It sounds awful. So it's all about, where you got to start. So to start with good audio, you got to have a good source. And then from there, you got to have a good source to play it back. And then, of course, then you got to have good speakers. And, of course, and then you put that all together, you got to have a good install.
This is a great time to tell a quick story. My first ever premium product install in my own car, personal car, this was back in the mid-90s. I had SoundStream components up front, SoundStream amplifiers, SoundStream subwoofers, and an Alpine CD player. And I put in one of my favorite albums. It was...
You put an album in?
Sorry. It was the CD.
Well, we did have record players in cars back in 1956, but they were 45s.
I'm not that old, man.
Yeah. So look at it.
Oh, man.
It's going to be the night of zingers.
Oh, my gosh. You should have heard us during dinner, but
no, you
that's
shouldn't.
A whole other topic. So anyhow, this is my first premium high-quality sound system, and I put in my favorite CD of the album, Van Halen 1984. What a fantastic album that is not well recorded.
Yeah.
So I actually heard how bad the recording was, and I called my SoundStream rep. I won't say his name because he might be watching. And I called him. I said, dude, man, this SoundStream stuff, it just doesn't sound that good in my car. And he said, Aaron, what are you listening to? And I told him, he said, you have now experienced your sound system being better than the recording you're listening to.
Well, I had a similar experience back in, probably was about 1983. Long before CDs. My first car had an 8-track under the dash of a 66 Mustang. And it was a Ward's 8-track, Montgomery Ward's, if you remember them. And it was a Sparkomatic 6x9 2-ways and a Sparkomatic booster under the dash.
Of course.
But I put my first really high-end stereo, it was actually in an 84 Cavalier, and I had a Kenwood KRC 9900. Why do we remember those numbers? Can't remember my own name. But it was a $1,000 shafted cassette deck.
What?
Yeah, of course I got it on Kenwood accommodation.
Oh, of course.
Working for a retailer. But it had AM stereo. Have you ever even heard of AM stereo? It sounds just as bad as AM, but it's in stereo. In DBX encoding, Dolby B, Dolby C, DBX. But anyway, I had a really nice Harman Kardon 3-head tape deck and, a good turntable at the time. And I would make my own tapes. And I'm listening to my tapes, and I was really liking it. Then I go back to the radio, and it's like, yuck.
Yeah.
And I called my Kenwood rep, and I will say his name. I don't know if he's still watching. I hope you are out there. Mr. Paul Roth, he was kind of the guy that introduced me into the high-end world of car audio, got me started on all this. Called him up and said, listen, there's something wrong with this radio. It just sounds awful when you're listening to the radio. He said, well, that's because radio's never going to sound as good as a good recorded. At that time, cassette, that's all we had. So that was my first introduction into having the right source and playing it in the right medium.
Yeah.
MP3 is not it.
Nope.
So that's where it started. So that's going to be what we're going to do at Master Tech. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be giving demos. I'm actually going to, play a woofer in my hand with no enclosure. We're going to put it in a baffle. We're going to put it in sealed. We're going to put it ported. We're going to put it in a bandpass box. And the guys will be able to see the difference in the sizes of all the enclosures. And we're going to hear the differences in the enclosures. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're going to do the actual live demo where we're going to do the compression demo and actually switch in and out from MP3. And actually, Ernie helped me put that together. So it's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. But like I say, it's really designed for the non-car audio novice or, maybe guys that know enough to be dangerous but would like to learn a little more. It's not going to be way over the top technical and just, blow you away with technology. It's really kind of thing that, you got to start somewhere.
Every man.
Yeah, and if you don't know the basics, you're never going to enjoy it. So that's going to be my plans. I've been building enclosures for that actually up until about an hour ago. In fact, I finally got all the glue off my hands. And the splinters out of my fingers.
So let's, I think that was, that's right, because you were going to go to Lone Star Throwdown but you just don't have enough time.
Yeah, that's just...
So, because that's happening, and that's why JW is left tonight, because he's going to be driving the truck there tomorrow.
Yeah, for some reason we had it on the calendar starting Friday.
Oh, I think that's probably
That's
loading.
when the show starts, but forgot the whole drive Wednesday and then set up Thursday. So I really needed these couple of days to get those enclosures done, and I still have to write the presentations for the show. But
And you have to sleep.
what's that?
Okay.
Somewhere in there. I usually do that on my desk.
Let's talk about the parts in front of you. So the topic is anatomy of a speaker. And what does it take to actually physically make a speaker? John, take us through it.
You know, we really missed an opportunity here. Talking about anatomy, and I used to have my Dr. 12-volt smock. I should have had that on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, we missed that opportunity. But I think it's kind of interesting, we start talking about the Solo X woofer and, how long it took to come to market and, what some of the problems were. I don't think a lot of people realize what goes into building a speaker. Now, remember, when Kicker builds a speaker, a subwoofer, coax, component, whatever, everything's designed right here in this building. So our engineers back there design everything. They do all the mechanics, they do the acoustics, we do every part of the speaker. We don't just go to a company that makes baskets and magnets and cones and surrounds. I want that magnet, that basket, that cone, that surround, put my name on it. I mean, that's easy. I mean, you can literally do that in one phone call. But we take the time to build everything, and along with that, not only do we design everything, we own all the tooling that makes the speakers. So
What is tooling, real quick?
tooling are all the machines and all the things that, like you think tools, you think, hammer, screwdriver, wrench, that, you manipulate things. Well, tooling is going to be what they make all the parts of the speakers with. So that's what we've got here. I've got a coax, a KSC 654 or 674, I can't remember which one. Basically have the components of that speaker here in front of me. And it's kind of fascinating to see. In fact, I was kind of having fun unboxing all this stuff this morning when I came in. But, where it all starts. So why don't we just kind of get started with the basket? I mean, that's it. Speaker has to have a basket. Now, this is actually not the first step. This is actually the second step in making a basket. It's just a steel disc. So originally starts out as a big flat sheet of steel. So the first thing we do is we make a tool that stamps it out into a disc. So that's one step, that's one tool.
One tool.
Some of these tools can be $30,000, $60,000, $100,000 per tool. So that's why we're never going to be the cheapest company out there, because we build everything and own it all in-house. That way we can control the quality. So there's step one. Step two, give it a little bit of shape. So that's the start of the basket. I got my target here, my little thing here that we got to see. So this is the start of a speaker basket. And I'm not sure exactly what the two holes in the center are for. They're going to go away here in a little bit. But so we start here and stamp it into that. Well, that's another tool, another process. Well, then we're going to stamp some holes into it and some windows into the basket. And some mounting holes. So we've made a big step from this to this. So there's a whole nother step, a whole nother tool required to do that. From there, we're going to take that basket and we're going to, probably hard to see, but actually another tool that rolls the edges over. And just like if you take a piece of paper, by rolling the edges, it makes it much more stiff and rigid. Same thing happens with baskets. We actually roll those edges and we kind of flare those windows to give this basket a little bit more rigidity. So once again, a whole nother tool to do that. Go to the next step, and if you notice, that one didn't have the big hole in the center, so now we punched out the hole for the magnet and the voice coil. So from there, it's going to get powder coated. So quite a few steps in just making that basket. So I mean, this probably isn't all the tools, like I said. There's what, 6 steps there, 6 different high-end tools and hydraulic presses required to do that. And I'm going to
I can take that.
I'm going to take those to you, and you can take them away.
Do that.
So let's go to the grill. So we got the basket made. We need to make a grill. Once again, starts off as just a piece of sheet metal.
Sharp.
Yep.
Careful.
Then it gets perforated and stamped into shape. You notice it's got the little tabs already cut out, and those tabs are what actually lock it into the basket, or into the part of the grill, which is actually kind of cool the way that's done. So these little tabs get bent over and they insert into slots in the trim ring for the grill. So there's another step. So it's just basic sheet metal perforated. I'd like to see who drills all those holes. It's pretty talented.
I think it's a machine.
Yeah, probably is. So then that grill is stamped into shape. So I can tell you this is the coax because that is kind of dished out. If that was a component, it actually have almost raised to it for clearance for the tweeter. So with the coax, the tweeter's flush with the mounting surface, but in the component, when it's coaxially mounted, that tweeter actually sticks up a little bit. So that's how you can tell the difference in the grills.
I never noticed that.
But yep, it's a big key because this will not fit on the component.
Sure.
I know that because I had to find some grills for a component, and because those didn't work that I had laying around. So you've got the little divot basically for the name badge. This is all stamped into shape. It's rolled, and you notice those little tabs are still there. So that would be the next step in making the speaker grill. And then, of course, it gets powder coated as well.
Powder coated, yeah, not painted.
Yep, so now we've got almost the finished grill. That's pretty close to the grill, but what's going to finish it off is next process is we're going to make the badge. And once again, that badge takes several processes. You basically have the tool to mold it, then you've got to silk screen it, and it also has a little tabs on the back that actually secure it to the grill.
We've got a couple questions, John. Let's take a question from
Absolutely.
the audience here.
Ring up. Bill, are you doing the questions tonight since JW left us? K-Vang says, what's a kicker sub now that sounds better than the old kicker competition, Stillwater Designs? You know, it's hard to say because, in fact, the old competition series sub still lives on as the comp woofer today.
Yes.
So here again, the comp woofer is our entry-level woofer. It's where we start, but there is a ton of technology. In fact, we're going to show you some of that tonight that carries into all the other products. But when it comes to sound quality, I'm going to be honest with you, no one can tell you what's best sounding to you. I always use the analogy if someone asks me, you know, what's the best speaker to buy? It's like, well, I'll go to the car dealership. What's the best color of Honda to buy? What color do you like? So it's all personal choice, and you can take the best speaker in the world, put it in the wrong box with the wrong amplifier and tune it wrong, and it can sound like the worst speaker. Or you can take a very affordable, like the Comp Series woofers, put them in the right box with decent power and a good setup, and they'll sound fantastic. So that's a question that there really isn't a definitive, this is the answer. It's all kind of up to you, and like I say, it's kind of part of the joy of the journey, to experiment and try different things. And you may think, hey, this is the best thing I've ever heard. I love it. I'll never change it. You might hear something that's like, oh, if I did this, it sounds better.
Well, and John, you and I both hopped in many, many cars, and the owner of the car thought it sounded fantastic. And we thought, wow, that's really bass heavy. Or wow, there's a huge hole in your response. But they loved it, so, whatever.
One of my good customers, in fact, I reached out to him not long ago when I had my store. He was a basketball player for the Nebraska Cornhuskers by the name of Tony Farmer, and Tony will laugh about this. Tony was 7'1", I think. Rich King was 7'3". His shoes were that big. But when I first met Tony Farmer, I remember he had a Volkswagen, I think it was a Jetta or a Rabbit. He had a single piezo tweeter in the dash in the 3.5, and he had 2 kicker 15s in the back.
Oh my God.
That was it. And he absolutely loved it till, of course, we showed him what real audio was, but he was happy to that point. So never be embarrassed to listen to different things, and there's an endless array of possibilities. So as we keep going on the speaker parts, we got to have the trim ring that mounts the grill together. And this is one of the first molds. It's still got the little mounting tabs where they actually broke the center out of this because there's actually a cone that fits in here that they actually use for casting, and then they'll break that out and send that piece for recycling. But what's really cool are these little slots in here that those tabs fit into. There's actually like some little grooves in there, so that what locks that grill in place. So you don't have to use that Gorilla Snot, that black beetle stuff. God, I hate that stuff because it gets everywhere.
Yeah.
So
it's the opposite of anti-seize.
Yep. And then it's got to go get cleaned up. In fact, it goes through a process that cleans all that casting flash off there. So a lot of steps in just making the speaker grill. So I'm going to give you this whole pile of things there, Aaron.
Let's take another question while we're...
Sure. And it all comes to look like this when it's done, ready to put on the speaker. So another grill. So another question we have. Larry Montgomery says, why don't y'all make the L5 anymore, and is it impossible to find one? Just like anything, we continue to make our products better. And the L5 was kind of misunderstood, its application. It was basically supposed to be kind of like a poor man's L7, and we had an L3 as a matter of fact also.
Yeah.
And people thought it was just a cheap L7 that handled the same amount of power, and like I say, it was a speaker that, we had great design and great intent, but it just doesn't always fit the market.
Misunderstood.
Yeah, what people are going to use it for. And anytime you build a product, there's two ways to build a product. You can design something exactly the way you want. If I'm going to build something that's going to be like this, build it, put it out in the market, and hope people buy it, which we do, and it works great because we're audio enthusiasts.
Absolutely.
The other thing you can do is listen to what the market says and needs and then build that product. So we've really adapted that over the last 15 to 20 years or so. And obviously, or we wouldn't have that Solo X. I mean, if you guys wouldn't have kept asking for it, you wouldn't have it. So we always take your input, anything you guys, think you'd like to see, or, there's other things. If there's, especially, and this is something I tell all my guys in the trainings, if there's something you don't like about our products, if something doesn't work, doesn't fit, let us know. You're not going to offend us. If we don't know it doesn't work or doesn't fit, we're never going to change it. So
can't fix it if you don't know it's broke.
Yeah, like I say, some people just want to complain. We don't want to hear from you guys. But if you have a legitimate complaint, let us know. And like I say, if we get enough interest or it really is legitimate, we'll look into it. Jason, WW2000. This is why some other companies use generic components and can sell it so cheap. I think he pretty much hit the nail on the head.
Well done.
I mean, they're not employing the engineers, the marketing guys, like I say, the designing all these tools. It's really amazing. I wish you guys could come and actually visit this facility and see what the engineers actually do. I mean, even the toroid transformers, which of course, here's a magnet ring, we'll jump to that. This is just, what we use for magnets, and this is unmagnetized, but they start out as basically a big long cylinder that they're chopped into size. But if you take this and wrap wire, around it, that's called a toroid coil. Well, we actually wind those by hand here for our amplifiers. So it's another thing we do in-house. If you guys remember the original Warhorse amplifier, that 10,000 watt one channel we came out with, what's that, 2005? 2009, it shows you how old I am, I can't remember. But the transformers in that were called a planar transformer. We designed that transformer in-house. In fact, the military uses those, but they use them for communications and radar. They're very, very tiny. And what we needed was something that was going to handle a ton of current. So the ones we made were about that big. So we actually had to seek out a place to make them. And we ended up having made in Tunisia. So it was a very unique transformer. And like I say, it was basically designed right here in-house. And we had to find someone to make it for us. So it's kind of cool. So
good history. Another question there.
Absolutely. The second question from Mr. Caving. Are you guys planning to restock the L7Q? Unfortunately, no. I hate to say so, but we're moving beyond that. It's kind of interesting. That was a great woofer, and it really, really got traction, got really popular, close to the end of its life. But like so many things, we own the tooling, we design everything, we don't own the factories. Some of these factories employ 1,500 people. We don't own the factories, but basically they build everything to our specs. In fact, our engineers, some of those guys are over in China 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year, and they go to the factories to ensure they're being made to our specifications. The factory that made those and the Q components decided, we're done. We're not going to make them anymore. Yep. So they told us oh, by the way, your next order is your last one. So yeah, it kind of caught us off guard. We weren't ready for that. So we don't have a replacement for those in the field yet, but we're always working on new, better things. So unfortunately, the Q-Class L7 is history. It's gone. But letting the cat out of the bag, I'm sure there's going to be something coming soon that's going to replace it. We're always making them bigger and better and badder, like you see there.
Always more.
So cool. Dean Shadrick Jr. says, will Kicker have high-res certification anytime in the near future? I've actually approached, some of our marketing guys about that. And the thing with the high-res is there's really no set certification for playback. There is a frequency range, but there's no, plus or minus 3 dB. To be honest with you, it's kind of like when I first started selling audio back in 82, 83, 1984. Do you know what came out in 1984?
Van Halen.
Well, yeah, an awful recording, but it was about that big around and shiny with a hole in the middle.
The CD.
The CD, exactly. Well, the whole thing when CDs came out, we were selling the Technics SLP7, one of the first CD players, is people heard this digital ready.
Oh, gosh.
You remember that?
Yes.
I got to have a digital ready receiver. I got to have digital ready speakers, digital ready head. And you try to explain to people that's just a marketing thing. Anything you have will work just fine when you're playing CDs. Oh, no, I need digital ready speakers. Okay, let me show you some digital. So take them over. Hey, if you want to spend your money, we'll let you spend it. But I really like high res. Any good speaker is going to play high res, whether they're certified or not. And I know there's several companies that do high res certification, but there really is no real concrete way to rate a speaker high res. I think they're talking like, have to play like from 10 to 50K, but there is no plus or minus range in there. I mean, every speaker we have technically can play 10 to 50K, just not real well.
Please don't.
And most speakers aren't going to play out to 50K very well. And the reason they do that for high res is all the resonances and all the, the timbre and everything for the higher frequencies, it may not be able to hear, but actually does help the music and some of the harmonics. So high res is very cool. In fact, I love it. In fact, I'm actually working on doing some high res in my car right now. Haven't got to it yet, but and what am I going to be using? Obviously, I'm going to be using Kicker speakers. One of the best sounding vehicles I've built in my life used the Kicker KS series speakers. I mean, it just.
Which car was that?
That was my Dodge truck.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
the current truck.
Yeah, it's
wow.
Absolutely unbelievably simple. 3.5-inch KSC 354s in the dash. Yes, a coax 3.5 and 6x9 woofers in the doors. And you talk about some unbelievable imaging, staging, and just fun to listen to and sounds good. So it's all about the preparation, using the right components. And like I say, you don't have to spend a ton of money to get good sound. And that's one of the things we always strive for. I mean, we could be the company that, makes the, I'll give you an example. Talk about, Otis and Thesis amplifiers.
Ooh-wee.
Love those amplifiers. They're $14,000. So if we spend all our engineering and time to make something like that, how many people are going to actually want that and buy it? So there are people out there that do, but that's not, our target. That's not what we specialize in. So if we spend all the energy doing that, we're not going to be able to do this kind of stuff. So we are kind of that 80% in the middle. We don't want the 20% at the bottom and that, half of a quarter of 1% at the top. Yeah, we're not after that guy either. We want to make sure that you guys, for the budget you have, and we've got a great range of speakers from like $49 all the way up to, $350. So we hit all those targets. A great question though. So where should we move next? What do you think, Aaron?
I think the surround is hanging out
The surround
there.
is kind of funny. Well, here's your surround, Aaron. Looks like some Gorilla Snot.
It does look like it, but it's not as sticky.
Nope, that's actually rubber. That's the butyl rubber. And that is heated up and put in an injection mold. And that's the surround. That's what it turns into. So that's another process, and that's a whole nother mold. And then this actually gets stamped and cut too. So there's another tool for that. So more tools. So from there, we might as well go to the cone, right?
Let's talk
We did the basket, we did the surround. So the cone, once again, this is the speaker cone for the KSC. This is injection molded as well. All of our speaker cones are injection molded. It's not a piece of plastic we vacuum over a form. That's called vac forming. This uses two parts of a mold. You have a top part and a bottom part, and how far you make those molds apart from each other determines how thick that material is. So we can make it thicker or thinner wherever we need it, to be for strength. And like I say, it's a lot more expensive to do that because rather than just heating the plastic up till it's soft and pulling it over a form with vacuum, you're now heating the plastic up till it's liquid and you're injecting it in high pressure in two-sided molds that have to be liquid cooled because it's so hot. So this is injection molding. You can tell because there's the injection point right here where the material is actually injected into the mold. So that's the way the cone starts out. Nice little, frisbee hat. Then it goes through another process. Yep, that we'll cut the center out of it, we'll punch the holes for the tinsel leads, and we'll trim the outside of the cone. So that would be the next phase.
Two more tools.
Yep, and then of course that's all got to be put together. So if you notice how slimline that cone is, and
Very
of course
shallow.
with the basket also, I mean these KSC speakers are, less than 2 inches deep even on the 6 3/4 inch. So you got your butyl rubber surround, you got your polypropylene cone here that's been injection molded and bonded together. So there's your speaker cone. Now we're going to dig down into some deeper parts.
Let's take another question.
Oh, I always forget questions.
I know.
I get so excited.
That's why I'm here.
So apparently Bill's like trying to find one out there. Uh-oh. Steven, you got a question?
No, I'm just giving you the
Oh, he's pushing stuff at me. All right.
Clint Black.
Will the black kicker button down shop shirt be available anytime?
Sandy, are you here?
You talking about this one with the yellow?
Yeah. Now, this one will not be available ever. This is our training shirt. This is our uniform, essentially. Hey, yeah, thanks, John. That was made by our art department here. So, button down. If you go to kicker.com, you go into the adult, gear,
Yeah.
adult clothing
Yeah,
section.
adult shirts.
Adult shirts, yeah. It's better than it sounds, really. That's where you'll find what is currently available. If you see a picture of it and it simply says out of stock, that means they've been reordered and they're coming back.
Hopefully.
Well, if it says out of stock, then it's temporary. It's coming back.
Unless the factory dies.
autographed T-shirts for free.
Sure.
No. But thanks for asking. That was Stephen Bambrow, in case you're wondering.
Cornelian St. Roman asks, the Kicker Solo X15, is it better than the Solo X18? It's, here again, I'm going to say it's got a lot more technology in it. You guys are going to hear, as we go, the guys that are using that Solo X woofer, they're doing some amazing things. That's all I'm going to say. But it's a totally different animal. Obviously, they're both square. You got an 18-inch. They're both rebuildable. The 18 you could rebuild without taking the magnet and basket out of the enclosure, which is great because, like I say, 106 pounds on that thing. With the new ones, you do have to dismount it and get to some bolts that are on the backside, but it's still not a difficult process. So it's hard to say. I'm going to tell you, obviously, we're going to make things better every year. We're not going to go backwards. So it's a different size. It's a little different design. It's got really a different application, especially start looking at the surround sizes and what they're used for. But the original Solo X was an incredible woofer. It was quite a statement, and it really kind of started the whole ultra high SPL thing. So I'm going to have to say that the new X is definitely better. And I don't know if we can say this, but out in the parking lot, I will tell you that. Should we tell them?
No.
Steve already told us.
We shouldn't.
All right, but anyway, there's something new coming down the pike. That,
I love our job, John.
Yep.
I want to keep it.
I drove up and got out of the vehicle today. It's like, what in the world am I listening to? So anyway, moving right along, let's go to the motor structure of the speaker. That is the way that the magnet or the back plate and the pole piece start the speaker. It starts as just a piece of bar stock iron. So nothing fancy about it. So that goes into a press. Of course, this is a bar. They have to saw it off. And the first step, the press is going to stamp it down into kind of another funky little shape, which is completely useless at that point.
Kind of a mushroom.
Yeah, pretty much. And from there, it's going to go into another press, and there may actually be more steps in between this that we actually just didn't get when we requested them. But it basically has a flat back. That's the start. And if you notice, the pole piece and the back plate, this is one solid piece of material.
Uniplate.
Yes, that's exactly right. This is really important. This is something we pioneered back in 1986 with the original competition woofers, the Comp A series. When you if I take this material here, and so here's the back plate, and I glue them together, this is what pulls the heat out of the voice coil. This is where it starts. And it goes to the back plate, which is like the radiator. If it can't get the heat from this to this and dissipate it, it's going to burn up. But if you take this and glue that together, the glue is going to be basically a barrier for the heat. It's not going to transmit through the glue. Even if you stamp this together, and even if you bolt it together, it's not going to be as effective as making it out of one continuous piece of material. So here we've got another step in the process. Now we're going to go one step farther. Now it's got a hole in the middle. And since this is a coax, that's going to be where you run the wires and the screws to hold the speaker together, and it does release some of the pressure underneath the dust cap, so it does make them a little bit more efficient, a little bit better low frequency response with low power. From there, we go to the next step here, which we thread the center and we cut the notch in the back. And the notch is for the wire for the coax, because when you put that label on, it's going to be flat. So another process, and then of course once it all is done, it's treated so it doesn't rust, because this will rust. This will rust eventually, so they're not marine certified.
Yeah, that is rusting.
Yep, well, see, that one already is. So this material is a plating on there that's going to give it that nice silver look, but it's also going to give it some resistance to the elements. So that would be the center pole piece and back plate, and then you've got to have a top plate. So you basically have to have the gap for the voice coil, and that starts off with a sheet of steel again. Once again, you punch out a disc. So there's the start of the top plate. And it's got to have a hole in it for the voice coil to fit through. So another process there. And then we're going to stamp it again, and these little bumps here that you see on this top plate, that's where they're going to line up into the basket. And that keeps this centered so this doesn't shift and the whole magnet structure doesn't shift and cause the voice coil to rub on the top plate, because this is the magnetic gap. The voice coil, which actually, let's just grab one here. The voice coil will ride in the center here. And this is a real critical piece of the speaker. That dimension right there, it's called the gap. The larger the gap, the less efficient the speaker is. So it's like your magnets. You think magnets, the closer you get them together, the stronger they are. The farther apart, the weaker they are. So we want this, let's grab a finished one. So we want that gap there to be as tight as possible to really concentrate that magnetic energy. But if it's too tight and there's any shift whatsoever, it can rub. So that's why with the Solo X woofers, this gap is so precisely machined and monitored that it's different between the different impedances of the voice coil. So they're not interchangeable. They will work, but you're not going to get the performance that you're paying for. So that's kind of a cool process. Stamp that, and of course, then it's got to be coated as well. So all this goes together to make the back plate, and of course, then you've got the magnet. And this magnet is a raw material. We talked about magnets in about 2 or 3 shows ago. Went through the whole thing, but this is it's just basically what a magnet looks like. And there's different types of magnets. We're going to talk about the next type here in just a second. So
Got some more folks want to ask some questions.
cool, more questions. Hey, Stu, how you doing? All right, I need to know what the outside diameter of the Solo X 12 and 15 is, please. I think that should be on the website.
Yeah, it's on our website.
Actually, and if you go to Aaron's going to look it up for you, but we try to put those dimensions because we know they're important. Let's just say it's going to be at least 12 and at least 15 inches. And it's definitely on the box, especially even on the coaxes and the woofers. That dimension is actually on the enclosure in the manuals. So Aaron's going to look that up. We're going to go to the next step. So we got talking about the back plate and the center pole piece. Now let's talk about the voice coil. So we already have the motor structure. This material here, this is called Kapton. You heard of Kapton voice coil formers. The reason we use Kapton, this material has the same expansion properties with heat as copper. So believe it or not, this plastic material will expand and contract as it gets warmer or cooler, and that matches the copper. If it was aluminum, aluminum actually heats up quicker, and that can cause issues if you don't plan for it correctly. Now, we do use aluminum formers on the Solo X, but if you notice, there's spiral cuts in that former, and that allows for that expansion. So that's part of the start of the voice coil. It starts out with a Kapton, and they'll wind the voice coil around that. And in fact, up here somewhere, that's actually voice coil wire. It's about the thickness of a human hair, and this is actually the wire for the tweeter, but it's not much smaller than this wire, and that's why if you're really clipping your system, the mid-range and tweeters a lot of times are the first to go because this is really fine wire, and it can really get damaged. You're gonna take my voice coil?
He's going to get closer.
So, like really zoom in. So I about lost the wire. People might think that's a hair. So what they'll do next is they'll take that Kapton former and the voice coil winding on it, and they're going to add this little sheet of reinforcement paper here, which is going to make it a little bit stronger, and it's also going to help bond that tinsel lead to the cone or to the former, so it's less likely to fray and break. So very, very unique, and that's on the mid-range. So we'll push these pieces aside. Now we're going to talk spiders. Yeah, not the creepy crawly kind. But spiders are really interesting the way they're done, and I'm going to tell you a story about some of our old products. We tried to do something different and it didn't work. This is the way it starts. That's just basically cloth.
Looks like a shirt I own.
Yep, and if you try to use that as a speaker, it's not going to work. So we take that cloth, we start there, and we give it a treatment. So look at the difference.
Oh, yeah.
You know, from this to that. So much stronger. Now, we'll put that in a press and add another resin to it to give it its shape.
Okay.
So there's the start of your spider, and then it'll go through another process where we punch the hole out of it. And then the final process, we'll go in and we'll cut the outside. So all these different things go together to make the spider.
It's a crazy level of detail. Hey, I've got the answers to that gentleman who asked about
Yes.
the cutting, the cutout. Ernie, can you pull up my laptop real quick? For the Solo X12, the mounting cutout is right here. My laptop. Oh, that.
He's not plugged in.
Let me check. Oh, you're right. I didn't plug it in. Yeah. Okay.
We're going to blame Ernie on that one. He's supposed to be taking care of this stuff.
We are professionals here.
Good excuse to show off the shirt again.
Oh,
Yeah, there you
yes,
go.
the beautiful shirt.
Now-
Okay, now can you pull me up? Okay, so here you've got the mounting cutout for, this is the 12-inch right here. So 11 and 1/16. And then for the 15, it is 13 3/4 mounting cutout.
I think he was asking about the overall dimension. I don't think that's in that specification, but I think it's in the owner's manual. If not, I'll have Steven get a tape measure. I think we got them both right here. We could measure them quick. Anyway, as we keep on moving while he's looking that up, so we got everything made there. Let's start in on the tweeter, because we got a whole nother process with the tweeter. Aaron, you're like stacking up over here.
Sorry.
So
There it is.
what-
Oh, sorry.
There we are.
There it is.
12 and 9/16 on the 12-inch.
12 and 9/16. Okay, so what I did was I just downloaded. Whoops, not the CIC.
That's the
The
Consumer
manual.
Information Card. If you're not, it's not the FBI, the IRS, or the CIA. It's the CIC.
So wait, that went to the wrong page.
So
Nope, that's not it.
keep going. I think it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's
Keep scrolling.
scrolling. Keep on scrolling.
While he's scrolling, we'll keep going because we still got a bunch of stuff to go. It's 8:15 already.
What?
Hey, did you tell people to register for the giveaways tonight?
No. But we are giving away stuff tonight.
We always give away stuff. So hopefully you guys have seen this before, and hopefully you've registered. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. This right here, this little chunk, that's got kind of unique color to it, Aaron, don't you think?
Rust?
I mean, it's the same thing as that, right?
Absolutely the same.
Yeah, but absolutely not.
It's not.
This is the start of a neomagnet. So it starts as a bar stock as well, and then it gets shaved into these little coins, for lack of a better term. And you notice it's got kind of an odd color to it. And once again, if you watch the show we did on magnets, neo can corrode. In fact, this is oxidizing. You can see it's changing in color. So what will happen after we do that, it'll go through another process where the edges are rounded off. It gets a coating on that to keep it from corroding, and then it gets magnetized. So that's basically a neomagnet.
So that's it.
So that's all there is to it, those 3 steps, but that's not all there is to the motor, because we still got to do the back plate and all that for the tweeter too. Once again, start with a pretty thick steel. So it takes a pretty good punch to do this, and we'll punch out, once again, more coins. It's almost like a $50.
It is.
Like between a $50 and a quarter, somewhere in there. So from there, it's going to get stamped into this shape, which looks kind of like a bottle cap.
The next 3 look almost identical to
Yeah,
me.
they're pretty close, but that'd be another step from that disc. And then we're going to go, in fact, I got to figure out which one is which here. I think someone was playing with. There's the next step, which if you notice, it's a little bit shorter. It gets trimmed down.
It is.
Jump face out on those so you can,
Do it that way.
yeah, just kind of hold them.
All right. So if you notice a little bit different change in the shape, this one's a little shorter, and once again, it's got some softer edges on it. And then from there, it gets refined once again. You know, it's much shinier all the way across, so it's finished. It's got rounded edges, not the hard sheared edges. So a whole nother process in just that, and eventually it becomes that.
Ta-da.
So if you ever look at the back of the tweeter, this is what's going to label the tweeter with the impedance and maybe the model number, and this neomagnet would actually sit inside there. So that is how you make the motor structure, part of the motor structure, the magnet structure for a Neo tweeter.
Oh, can you show us how the voice coil slides
Yep,
in
and
there?
that's exactly where I was going to go next. So to make the voice coil for the tweeter, we already showed you the wire. Here's the Kapton former, and I think it got sat on. It's so thin and so fragile. It's got to be ultra light, but still rigid. And then you'll see that the little voice coil windings are actually wrapped around that. And there's no paper reinforcement former. There just isn't room in this speaker. So that is the voice coil, and it actually rides in there.
Stephen.
See, we don't get a red light on that camera. He just takes stuff, and
Yeah,
we assume that he's using something.
Look at that.
Yeah, and that's supposed to be like a paper or a ring, a disc. So it's been smushed.
It's like chewing gum.
Yep. So from there, you got to have the other components to the speaker. And so we start off with the material for the tweeter, which is a silk fabric, which you can see here, or maybe can or can't. And once again, it's made in big sheets, and that goes through a heat press to form a soft dome. So why do we call it a soft dome? Because it's not ultra soft, but it can't be too soft. It's got to be very lightweight, but it's not rigid. And the whole reason why we use this type of material in a tweeter, it's got an extremely high internal loss. So like this desk, if I tap on it, you don't hear a lot of ringing. So that's got high internal loss. But if I hit a bell and it keeps resonating, that's got low internal loss. So by using a material like this and that shape, it actually really, multiplies the internal loss. So the tweeter doesn't actually add its own sound to the sound you're trying to listen to. And then, of course, we go to things like the little trim ring around the tweeter, the little waveguide, and the shape of this. I mean, every bit of these speakers is so highly engineered. It's really interesting, going and talking to Alan. You can't ask him a simple question because he will give you the actual answer, which sometimes is pages long. And he's just such a wealth of information. It's just amazing what that guy knows about building speakers. But the actual diameter of this ring, the angle of the radius here makes a difference. The height, we will adjust. In fact, I remember talking about when we were doing the development of the QSC speakers, they were actually changing the height of this 1/4 of a millimeter at a time, and having a tool made for each one of those to see how it changed the sound to ensure we got the right sound. So from there, we got to go into a process that shears the little molding tabs off and gives it its nice little copper color around the outside. So that's just all the processes that it takes to make even what we call the waveguide for the tweeter.
Let's take another question.
Great.
What do we got, Ernie? Dalen. Hey, Dalen, how are you, buddy? He's our Canadian friend. He was down here for Kicker U in-house training. The phase plug in the center of the KSS components, would the speaker sound different without it in place or not significant enough?
And the technical answer is yes, it will sound different. The phase plug actually has some function. The shape of the phase plug makes a difference, and I can't tell you it's going to sound better or worse, but we do work on the process. I mean, you remember a lot of speakers had a big dust cap. It's going to really have a lot of effect on the dispersion pattern of the sound. Not so much of the frequency response, but so it does make a big difference. And yes, it will sound different with or without it, especially when you start talking a component versus a coax. Component doesn't have the tweeter over the mid, so you don't have any reflections. But when you put the tweeter in the center, that post actually goes clear to the top and flares out to the tweeter. That blocks some of the sound from mid-range, so that will change the sound as well. So another reason why components are really preferred because it really lets the natural sound of the speaker come through.
Good question.
So,
Another
absolutely.
question for us, Ernie. On average, how many pieces of one part are made at one time? That's
Thousands.
a great question.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you're talking about, how many of, the back plates do we make at one time, I mean, we probably sell 100,000
yeah.
of each model coax a year. So I think we order them literally in the 10,000s when it starts coax. Now, woofers will order, maybe 1,000 at one time, or, depending on the model of woofer and how many we expect to sell. And that's always the challenge. You don't want to order too much.
Yes.
Because if you have all these parts made and you decide to make something better, then all those get trashed. And that does happen from time to time.
Good question, Clint. Let's
Yep.
take another question.
So Cassandra Gutierrez says, do the new Solo X sound good in sealed boxes, and when are the 8 Solo X's coming out? Well, I can only answer the first question. They sound fantastic in sealed boxes. I'm sure someone else has done it, but I've already built 2 vehicles with the Solo X12s in sealed boxes. We did one from Sean from Murder Nova from Street Outlaws.
Yeah.
And our rep in Sacramento, Dana Doyle, he's got a car that we've built for the Solo X sealed. They sound great. I mean, tight, clean, powerful. Obviously, we only recommend a ported box in the specs, and we do that because this woofer is really designed for the market that's looking for just as loud as possible with,
Right.
you know, a little bit of power. So a ported box will always have a little bit higher, you know,
Output. SPL.
output
Yeah.
than you. I was actually thinking power in versus powered efficiency. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
So the ported boxes got higher efficiency, but they're trade-offs. With a ported box, it's going to roll off quicker on the low end. If you don't tune it right, it's going to sound worse. So, but yes, they really do sound good. I mean, I absolutely love the sound of those vehicles. So, yes, they do sound good in solo boxes. And Solo 8, I don't have any idea what she's talking about. So we got the 10, 12,
heard
and
of
the
it.
15. So,
Yeah.
all right. So that's not all the parts of the speaker. We got to have connections. So we start off with these 2 pieces of material, and it's, you know, if you look at this, it's what in the world are you going to use that for in a speaker? You know, this little sheet of copper, and of course, whatever this material is, it's almost like Bakelite. So that material is going to get cut into this, which is a little barrier strip. And this is for the connections on the back of the speaker. Can't even get a hold of that.
So that black stuff is non-conductive.
Exactly. So
Okay.
and the copper is going to get punched into the little tabs that you see. In fact, you look at this is like, you know, like a little square lug nut. I mean, and it does have a very important purpose, but you know, all these pieces have to be designed, they have to be machined, and they have to be sorted. And not only that, after they're designed, machined, and sorted, they have to get plated. Because the copper is going to oxidize, so they get this nice, you know, plating on there and ensure they're going to be reliable. But then you have to put all these pieces together, and you get a terminal strip. So if you see that little plug there, that's where the wires come through.
Ta-da.
So it's kind of like putting a grommet in something. So it takes all those pieces just to make this. And once again, there's probably other steps involved, but think of all the tooling involved to making all these pieces. And we do all this design in-house. We don't buy any pieces of those right off the shelf.
So let's take one more question, and then we're going to cut to a commercial because we need to reset.
And that's what it turns into.
Oh,
Almost forgot.
what he said.
Yep, so there's the final product. And if you notice, we didn't talk anything about the label. We didn't talk about the making of the crossovers.
Oh, yeah.
So there's still more that goes into this. And the boxes, I mean...
The packaging, yeah.
Yeah, the packaging. I mean, there's even tools to make the packaging and printing and the right ink. And if you notice, this is the KS650. It's got a 12 dB per octave crossover and this little device here that's called a poly switch that protects the tweeter from distortion. So if you're cranking on your system and your tweeter's cut out and you turn it down, they turn back on, that's because this saved you from blowing your tweeters and having to replace your speaker. And all of our coaxes have that. So just another peace of mind from the good folks at Kicker. But put all together, that's what it's going to look like. So awesome. All right, another question. Can't lose my voice coil wire.
Yeah, I can't even see it. Cedric, good evening. What amp would you recommend for 2 Solo X10s?
I'd say the 1800 one. I mean, that's actually be underpowered. If it was me, I'd put an 1800 one on each one.
There you go.
Or there's another option. You could put a 1200 on each voice coil.
You could.
Or an 800 on each voice coil. There's a lot of different options there. When it comes to power, I've said it many times, I'm all about more power than what they're rated just because it's cleaner, it's easier on the amplifier and less likely to clip. If you're mechanically damaging a speaker, like pulling it apart, like Derek did,
Derek?
You remember with the Solo X when he ran 11,800 watts in the Solo X12 and pulled it apart? That's how you know you have too much power, is when you're mechanically damaging the speaker. If you're burning up the voice coils, it's almost always from clipping. Almost always. I mean, not 100%. So
The Jeep that you and Jacob have been working on has 2 Solo X12s.
with an 1,800 watt on each one.
That's right. So that is the hot setup.
And
So,
I'd
yeah.
still like more power.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah, see, I'm running 600 watts to my 6x9s in my door. That's nothing like power.
It's John.
Yeah, I'm nuts.
So let's take a 60-second break, and we're going to reset for the next stage of our exposition.
I gotta go home?
No, not yet. We still need you.
All right.
We'll be right back.
Here we go.
Kicker Performance Audio. For almost 50 years, we've been rocking the planet with our world-class product covering everything that drives you, whether in your car, truck, boat, motorcycle, side-by-side, or even on your head. Kicker Performance Audio's passion for bringing you your favorite music like you've never heard it before is what drives us. So wherever you need us, Kicker Performance Audio will be there for you.
Uh-oh, that's scary. What was that?
It was a video glitch.
We went plaid.
That's didn't go that fast.
Oh, really? Felt like it. So we are back live, and now we have
More
a
stuff.
pile of what? Wow, what do we got?
Why not talk about the L7T?
Wait, we've got one here. Look at this.
We got more than one.
Look at this.
So that's what we're going to talk about building, but that's the 12. We're going to talk about an 8 because the parts are smaller. It's going to be easier to build. So there's some similar processes here, but once again, it's still kind of interesting to see all the different steps. So you can take that one and, in fact, we probably should have moved all this stuff too, but I got to figure out how to sort that, put it all back in the bags. So let's start with the basket again. So here again, just a nice rusty stamped steel plate. From there, it gets into the first press, and if you notice, it's no longer square. And what happens when you press that, this material's actually pulled in, so it actually changes the shape. And you guys that have pressed your own like wire mesh grills, you'll know that it's nice to start with a piece much bigger than your actual grill because of the fact it's going to distort the material.
That's very sharp, John. Please be careful.
So I like bleeding on camera.
No, no.
From there, we go to another step, which we're going to stamp more windows into the basket. So a whole nother tool involved for that. And after the recesses are stamped in place, starting to stick together, we start cutting the windows. And of course, without the windows, it would be a sealed back woofer, which would basically be a mid-range at that point. So we have to have another tool that goes in and punches the windows out of the basket. And then more windows, because you can't punch them all at the same time. This starts punching more holes in the basket. Once again, a whole nother process. And then more windows, more holes cut out all the way around. So a lot of steps in just making a stamped steel basket.
That's amazing.
Where with like the Solo X, it's cast aluminum. It's one mold. You pull liquid aluminum in there that's molten, and you get a basket. This is a lot more processes and a lot more tools to make even the stamp basket, but they're actually a little bit more cost effective. And once again, we've got more holes punched, more shapes put into this, deeper punches here on the little legs on the basket. And now we'll cut it all out. So now we've got holes punched here, we have holes punched here, the center is now cut out, the frame is cut out, the mounting holes are cut in. So it's starting to look more like a speaker basket at this point, and once again, being the L78, it's very shallow. And as we mentioned, you've got all the holes cut. Well, now what we've done is we've rolled the edges to make that stronger. So that makes that basket much more rigid and gives kind of nice little landing and a cosmetically finished look to it. And of course, it's powder coated again. Whoa. As I knock everything off here. Bowling for dollars. So finished basket. So a lot of steps involved in that. I'm going to hand those to you. That's actually getting kind of heavy.
And sharp.
So as we talked about before with the pole piece, bigger speaker requires a bigger chunk of iron. So that's got to be probably 3 pounds in just that piece right there. So it is a chunk of iron. It's got to get stamped. And here again, it's cut to shape and put in its first press.
Bong.
And it kind of looks like, I don't know, one of those little nesting dolls from Russia.
It does.
I don't think you can get anything inside that. And then there's actually another step between that, I do know for a fact, and we're starting to get the look of the pole piece and the back plate. Nothing fancy. It's got a little bit of shape now, so it's got a little bump to it. But we're starting to get the actual shape of the back plate. And here again, we've stamped this down more, which brings the dimension out this way.
It's an amazing amount of pressure to do that.
Oh yeah, and that's why, unfortunately, you get to a point where you just can't manufacture it. It just isn't cost effective or even possible. When we get into the Solo X woofers, those are 2 pieces. They had to be, because you look at the size of that pole piece and that back plate, it just was physically impossible to make that out of one piece. But I think we've proved its power handling capabilities are pretty darn amazing with that speaker. So going right again, another step. Say we've flattened it out even farther and given a little shape here, a little landing for the magnet to actually sit in there to help center it. So it's got a little step. And then the back stamped for the logo. So it's a lot of steps in these processes, a lot of tooling and a whole lot of pressure. And by the time you're done, that's what you get.
Now it's finished.
Yep. You notice it's actually even got another punch in the center, which not even sure why that's there.
Yeah.
So you're not mounting a tweeter in the center, but there's got to be a reason for it, or they wouldn't spend the time to do it, because that one's definitely not as deep.
It could be used to move the tool along too.
Very possible.
Yeah.
So here we have
Somehow I got to move these along.
the center pole piece, and
Start moving parts.
I'm going to start throwing these on your computer.
Yeah, just put them right there. They're not
It's on
magnetized.
my computer,
right?
I don't care. All right, so top plate. Once again, there's a couple processes before this. This is actually cut from a single piece. This actually happens to be, looks like almost 3/8. It's bigger than a 1/4 inch plate steel. And then, of course, you got to punch the center out for the voice coil. Then it's machined again. Now, this is the top plate. And if you notice the way this top plate is shaped, what we did with the L7T woofer is most woofers have a bump on the back plate. We took that motor and we turned it upside down and put the bump on the top plate. That makes that speaker shallower, but it still has extreme amounts of cone travel. It actually has more travel than the L7Rs, so more output, more power handling. And then one of the other processes, we've got to take that and give it its final shape. You have that top plate shape, and when we stamp it again, now it's going to have those little mounting tabs. It goes through another process where there's holes drilled in the top plate, and then they're threaded. That allows us to bolt the speaker together, bolt this to the cone, or the basket assembly. You're doing pretty good at clearing all that stuff off there, Aaron.
Trying, man.
So now we start talking about the other parts of building, and it's kind of interesting when we ask for this. We've got this nice little bag of, looks like just pellets, and this is polypropylene. This is the way it starts, and there's some black ones mixed in there, which were scraps from part of the process, but that's how it starts. This material is actually heated into a liquid, and then it's injected into the molds, and of course it's given its black color, the dye. And as we mentioned before, you've got to have basically some casting flash, and this is where the material is pushed down in through the mold and that spreads out to the various corners of the piece. So there's another tool required just to make that piece. Yes.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, yeah, let's take a question.
And then you break that out and you get part of the trim ring for the speaker. Question. So Mullen Performance Audio says, can you break down the different spider materials and how you decide how stiff you want per use of product? Yeah, here again, when it comes to the spiders, and I'm glad you reminded me because I mentioned before I was going to tell you a funny little story, and that's exactly what the story was going to be about. So this material, it's got to be flexible, but it's actually a spring. So it really depends on the speaker engineer what he's trying to do. Now, if you notice, like the Solo X woofer, the suspension is very, very stiff. It's got a high compliance, which when you push on it, it's very hard to push. The reason we do that, one of the reasons it's got two spiders, is to help bring the resonant frequency up. The heavier something is, the lower the resonant frequency. Well, you think lower is always better, right?
Absolutely.
Well, it gets to a point where if it's too low, the speaker is very, very heavy and it's not efficient. We got to bring that up because the speaker operates above and below the resonant frequency. Resonant frequency is the frequency it vibrates and moves the easiest. So if it's too low, it's not going to play the upper frequency. It's not going to have the punch for the mid bass that you're looking for. So there's a lot of, this is very, very important to the tuning of the speaker. There's many different materials you can use. I've seen speakers actually use rubber, like Santoprene spiders before. So it just depends on the individual, speaker designer and the effect you're trying to get. But the stiffer this is, the more it's going to help bring that resonance up. I think with the original Solo X18s, one of the first castings we did, it had resonance of about 16 hertz.
Wow.
So it's so low. I mean, it basically was down in those really subharmonics, so just that guttural feeling. But we needed to bring that resonance up, so you start stiffening the spider and the suspension, and the surround is the same thing. It does basically the same thing this does. This centers the voice coil in the gap, and you also have the surround to do that, but the surround, when we start talking about, we might as well go to that next, makes a big difference too. But the story I was going to tell you is we decided with speakers years ago, we were going to do black spiders. No one had ever done black before. You always see them this color. So we decided to do black spiders. Well, the interesting thing is when they put these in with the resin, they're baked to lock that shape in. Mm-hmm. So they actually monitor how they're done by how dark they get. Ah. And I'm not sure if it's still that way, but back then they would actually watch the spiders, and when they reached a certain color, they knew they were fully baked. Well, guess what happens with black? You can't tell. Sorry. You can't tell if it's overbaked because then they get brittle, or if it's underbaked, then they don't hold their shape as well. So that's why we no longer do the black, because it was hard to have good quality control. So it was a great idea at the time, but it just didn't work out in that particular application.
It was half-baked.
Yep. Isn't that a movie or something? Here again, here's another. This is the top section of the mounting point for that L7T. Once again, you've got your casting flash here, and then it gets all cleaned out and turns into the front trim ring. That was actually the bottom trim ring there. So, since you were asking about spiders and surrounds, let's go right to that. Well, let's look at this. Here again, this looks like basically burlap.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably is a form of that. That's the way the spiders start. And then they're treated with, resin. In fact, I wish I could read what that writing was. Yeah. But that's one of the steps to that speaker. And then here, if you notice, it's been baked and cut. And if you notice, it's, once again, the center's still there, so that's got a nice stiffness to it. And the way the rolls work, I mean, if you have a continuous smooth roll, or if you have a progressive roll, which actually they change diameters as they go, And some of them are more, sawtooth shaped. It just depends on, what the engineer is trying to accomplish and what best accomplishes the needs. So that has to go through another process where we punch holes in it. Punch a hole in the center, we trim the outside, and what do you think all those holes are for?
Messy?
Yep, that's where we actually run the tensile leads, which one of the things we found out years ago, by running the tensile leads, it actually supports the leads because the leads had to get heavier to handle more power. And once again, the heavier it's inertia, they didn't want to move, so they could actually tend to fray and break and put a lot of stress on it. So by putting them in the spider, it supports it, and less likely the leads are going to whip and break. And also, you don't have a focus point where they're going to flex. So it makes the leads last a whole lot longer. So that's the steps in doing the spider. And once again, you notice the darker color from the actual baking of the material. So that's how you can tell when those are done. This fun stuff, that's Santoprene. Now, Santoprene is a trademark. It's actually a modified polypropylene. So Santoprene, it's kind of cool. And another quick story, you can change the properties of materials by adding stuff and taking things away. So Santoprene is a modified polypropylene. It's polypropylene that's had a flex agent added to it. So familiar with silicone, right? We know what silicone is, that gooey stuff that smells that you put around windows and seal boxes with. Did you know the space shuttle windshields were made out of silicone?
Did not know that.
So it's a different form, but it's optically clear silicone, 6 inches thick. But it doesn't flex. It's still silicone. It's just a different type of material, a different, concoction. So this is the way the Santoprene starts off with, and you can't really tell they're beads, but I can squeeze them and they've got a little bit of flex to them, so it's got the rubberish content to it. So that's the way Santoprene starts. It starts as polypropylene with a flex agent added, and then that's rolled out into big sheets. Now the cool thing about us, we just recently got a CNC machine a couple years ago. We prototype our own surrounds right here in-house. So we use the CNC machine to cut the I wish we had some of those here. In fact, we just had them. I was just back playing with the CNC today. I'm learning to do CNC, finally, yay. So we actually take this material, and it's got different thicknesses and different, stiffnesses, so the durometer changes. But this material makes a big difference too, just like the spiders do. How thick it is, how stiff it is. So we have rolls of this in back, like 50-foot rolls that are this wide, that we can make our own surrounds, and we can put them on a speaker and test it that day in-house. So it saves our development time. So we do all that prototyping in-house. We do all the listening to make sure they're exactly the way we want. But that's the way that the surrounds start, as one sheet of Santoprene. So that gets sent to a vacuum former. I talked about our cones are injection molded. Well, the Santoprene is heated up and pulled over. There's a vacuum applied around a form, and this is how they vacuum form the Santoprene to get the surround shapes. So it's kind of a neat little process, and then that's got to get cut. So you cut the center out, you cut the sides out, and now this can be attached to the cone and the basket, and that's how you make surrounds for a speaker.
Let's take a question.
Absolutely. Oh, and you put it all together, and you get that. And we actually stitch this, and people, why do you stitch your surrounds? Because your glue sucks? No, and we use the same glue everybody else does. It looks better. I mean, and it's guaranteed it's not going to come apart, but that is actual stitching. As you can see, it goes all the way through. It just makes the speaker look nicer, and yes, it is going to make sure it's never going to come apart, but that's usually not an issue of the cone coming away from the surround any longer. It was an issue with butyl rubber, not Santoprene. Butyl, just the glues didn't stick to it really well. So this is pretty much the finished cone, and then, of course, there'll be the little dust cap that goes over it. And here's the processes of the cone. Here again, start off with the first injection molded piece, and the material's injected into the center, and then it's punched and cut, and then finished with another stamp. You notice the texture changes.
Oh, yeah.
So the final mold, this is heated up again and stamped, and it gives it the final texture, and then it's silk screened with the L7 logo.
There's that back stitching again.
Oh, the back stitching?
Yeah, hopefully that's something our customers never get to see.
Well, you can see it if you look under the speaker. But yeah, it's just something that's kind of one of the trademarks of Kicker. In fact, quick trivia question, what is the one speaker or the one woofer that we do not stitch? Any guesses out there? We're going to let this go, see if, I think Ernie knows the answer, or Bill does. So let's see if you guys can guess which is the only kicker woofer that is not stitched and why. So it's a two-part question. We'll see if you got any answers here after we keep going a little bit.
Let's take a question from the audience, too. Ernie, can you give us a question?
Ernie is a question. K20 Turbo Kid says, what's the actual process of magnetizing? How is it done? You want to tell them?
It's this giant, expensive machine that simply charges the magnetic material. And John's got a funny story about this.
Yeah,
John,
I really do.
Tell us the story. I love the story.
The actual process, the way it works is they're big coils and they pass energy through it, and the magnetic energy passes through the magnet material and it aligns the molecules, and that's how you charge a magnet, by getting all the molecules aligned. And it's I can't remember if it's DC or AC that does it. I think it's almost got to be DC, but it's kind of a cool machine back there. So we used to rebuild a lot of speakers here in house, and we still have a rebuild department, though they do very little rebuilding. They're the guys making all the GM tailgates. So we do rebuild speakers. Customers could send their speaker in, and we'd rebuild it for half the cost of a new one, send it back to them with a warranty. And like I say, great woofers. In fact, they were absolutely built incredible. They were hand built one by one. So we had a customer that called up and said, hey, I just got my 4 woofers rebuilt and they're not working. Really? He said, yeah, they're not working. I said, oh, well, have you checked the impedance on them? He said, yeah, I put an ohm meter on them. They all measure at 4 ohms. They're all single voice coil. They're actually the original solos from back in the day, the C series, the gray ones. So he said, yeah, they all measure 4 ohms. Okay, well, maybe your amp's not working. He said, well, I think it's working because when the bass hits, the lights in the car dim and the light on the amp dims, and it's getting warm.
What?
So, okay, obviously it's producing power. It needs to hook another speaker up to it and it works. So, but, they had continuity. So why didn't it work? You got continuity, you got amplifier power. So what the magnet does, it's a stationary magnetic field that the electromagnetic field pushes and pulls against. Guess what? If you don't have that stationary magnetic field, the other magnetic field just energizes and de-energizes. It doesn't do anything. So what had happened was, Dan's like, hey, put a magnet in the back of that and tell me what happens. The guy's like, nothing. He's like, well, that's your problem. He's like, guy's like, what? And he said, well, that's the problem. Nothing happened. It didn't stick to it. Mm-hmm. So kind of a funny process, and that was a screw up on our part. Obviously we took care of the guy, and this has been 25 years ago. But yeah, forgot to remag the speakers after they were rebuilt. So everything was perfect. They just didn't get them magnetized. Now it got to the point where the magnetic energy got to be so powerful and required such a big machine that we stopped doing it in house. Mm-hmm. In fact, if I remember some of the old wives' tales, if they are wives' tales, when the original Solo X woofer came out, it had a BL of 40, and that's the pushing force. It's kind of like horsepower. The closest competitor had a BL of 22.
Wow.
So it was almost double the force. And that's why if you look at a lot of the SBL arenas, those motor structures on those old Solo X are really sought after. But there was a limit to how many we could put in a container at one time. Because they were so powerful, it would actually affect the navigation on the ship, the magnetic compass. So. All right, so we're going to keep going. If you guys have any guesses, which is the only kicker woofer that's not stitched. What is this little funny thing?
That looks like a really small woofer basket.
Yeah, pretty much. It kind of is. This is the cone brace. So once again, injection molded part to punch the center out. This bolts to the bottom of the cone to help make that cone even more rigid. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people think that, it's a square shape, it's going to flex and twist. It's not going to flex and twist if you design them correctly, and mm-hmm. we're very, very particular about how they're designed. And once again, all these pieces, we design them right here in house and make them work. In fact, this is interesting. So there's even some copper pieces inserted in here. Or is it just painted? I can't even tell with the glare on there, but yeah, a lot of interesting processes to do that. And of course, even simple things like the trim around the magnet. This is a completely, I shouldn't say useless part, but it doesn't have any function for sound. It just makes the speaker look better.
Finishes it.
So it takes several processes to build this, and this has to be designed, and the tools have to be built. So kind of cool. So moving right along, we've got more pieces over here. You got to have that dust cap. So once again, here's the starting of the dust cap. You can see where the plastic's injected into the mold. Then it gets punched out. Of course, you got your little flash there from the actual casting process. Then it goes through another stamp that trims it up, and then they're silk screened. So a lot of little processes, and I'm not going to break all these out because we already did that on the coax, but all the terminals. In fact, it's a square speaker, right? So it's got to have a square push button terminal. A lot of you guys probably didn't even know that or paying attention. A lot of you guys probably did too. But we designed all these square push button spring terminal. Once again, it's a square speaker. These were all designed by us, and they're kind of unique to our speakers. And of course, Aaron's got all the parts that, you got to put it together. Here's the little spring that goes inside and the screw that bolts it through to the basket through here. So that's got to be machined. It's got to be threaded. This has got to be built. So it's crazy.
Chance, our the mechanical engineer, the lead mechanical engineer here at Kicker, he said these are the only 2 parts that are not Kicker designed on the L7T woofers. Those are the only 2 parts that come off the shelf.
The spring and the screw.
That's it. Everything else is totally customized.
But I'm sure they're made to our specifications. We got to be picky like that. And of course, you got to have voice coils. So once again, same process with the voice coils. They've got the copper, they've got the Kapton, they've got the reinforcing collar on the top. A lot of things go into making a speaker. And it's kind of interesting when you make voice coils. When we do our dual voice coil speakers, both coils are wound at the same time. A lot of people think that one coil's wound, at the bottom, then one wound at the top. Well, if you only played one side, it'd be very lopsided in sound if one coil burned out. A lot of people think you wind one coil, then put the other one on top of it. That actually changes the characteristics of the heating and the cooling. So we make sure that they're both wound at exactly the same time, so it's a uniform way the speaker's built. So
I didn't know that.
And it depends on, there's so many things with voice coils. I mean, we get into, aluminum wire, copper wire. You can talk about round wire, square wire, octagon-shaped wire. I mean, they all have individual purposes, and it's really up to the acoustic engineer. And of course, not always, I should say that. I mean, it's up to the acoustic engineer to build it, but it really comes down to our good friend Tim Sizemore in warranty. If these start failing, he's going to say, okay, you can't use that wire anymore. We're going to do something different, or whatever it happens to be. So eventually it comes down to the guy that does all the quality control. He can actually change the design of a speaker by saying, hey, it sounded great up front and it worked for a while, but it just isn't good in the field. And that's why we have what we call running changes, because we're not afraid to try new things if we think it's going to work. But here again. All right, so who out there thinks they know what woofer is the only woofer that is not stitched on the Kicker lineup? What do you have, I think we got 11 round woofer lines.
I think at last count, yes.
And 5 square woofer lines.
Yeah.
We have a lot of woofers, but everyone has its purpose. So let's see if anyone's got the right answer. Spectre says, Snowman, the only speaker not stitched. That's not a woofer. But you're right, that is not stitched. That is glued. In fact, if you notice all the coaxes, they're glued too, so they're not stitched. But the only woofer that is not stitched. Who else we got? Jason W. about 2000. The PA speakers typically don't have a lot of excursion, so use cheap surround. That's all it needs, and there's a lot to be said for that. And you're right. You look at a lot of speakers with that accordion surround, and PA speakers are designed to be very, very efficient. So they got to have a light cone, and they don't have a lot of excursion because they're not looking for that real low bass like we are. So great observation and great thing to point out on that. Thank you, Jason, for that. 25 hertz passive radiator. That's not technically a woofer, but yeah, you're right. They're not. So, all right, 25.
That's a good guess.
We're going to give you half a credit point for that one. So, still looking for the right answer. Who we got up there? Larry Keller says Kicker CRT W672 6 3/4 inch comp RT subwoofer does not appear to be stitched. They are stitched. Yep. We're still looking for a woofer that is not stitched. You guys come up with some good guesses, though. Probably a marine woofer. Danny.
Woohoo!
Why do we not stitch it? And he's exactly right. So, in fact, Stephen put one up here for me. This is the only woofer that is not stitched in the Kicker lineup. We do that because when you stitch something, you have to put holes in it, right?
Holes, bad.
Yep. Holes are bad for keeping water out. So we do not stitch this, but it's really interesting. The process, the reason these are not glued together. So if they're not glued together, not stitched together, how are they made?
Co-molding.
Co-molding. So what we do, we take the Santoprene surround and this polypropylene cone, and the materials are heated up, and they're both pushed into the mold at the same time. So they're actually melted liquid when they mix. So these do not require stitching, and that keeps them waterproof. And once again, co-molding is kind of cool. It's just the way it works. So both materials are injected into the mold at the same time. So good job, Danny. Appreciate that, pointing that out. And you're exactly right. The marine woofers. Pour some water on it. Where's my water?
Stephen, bad.
And of course, the backside of these are sealed too. Since we got it out here, we'll plug the speaker just a little bit. Why not? And if you notice, the basket's not steel. It's not aluminum. It's polycarbonate, so they don't corrode. They don't warp, with sunlight. So, and we've got covers over the terminals, which I don't think this one had. No, it doesn't have the cover over it. But you even notice the little gaskets here to keep water out of that terminal. So there's a cover that snaps over that to keep those connections. I'm not going to say watertight, but about 95% water resistant.
Yeah.
So once again, truly watertight is really difficult to get, especially when you got to run wires through something, especially something that consumers or installers got to thread themselves. So great sounding woofer, 10 and 12 inch. 2 ohm and 4 ohm, plug that free air, and of course sealed or ported speakers. So that is the pieces of a speaker. Pretty awesome. We're pushing the 9 o'clock mark. We didn't do too bad. So anybody else have any questions on developing a speaker? And I promise if I don't know the answer, I'll make it up.
Right there.
There we are. Go ahead and read it, Aaron.
Why do loaded enclosures tend to have less space than what is recommended for the individual
That is a great
speaker's
question.
recommended size?
Why don't you go and tell him why? Because you're right.
Performance and size, there's compromises. As John said earlier, there's compromises in most everything. And some of the woofer enclosures would be larger than would fit in most applications. So we have to have a compromise between size and performance. So that's the reality of it.
There's actually a cost difference too, because a bigger enclosure requires more materials. It gets heavier, it costs more to ship, and you can fit less on a pallet. So the engineers weigh that pretty close, but we can, absolutely guarantee if you buy one of our loaded enclosures, the same guy that designed the woofer designed the enclosure. They are designed to work together. Now, can you get better performance with a custom-made enclosure? Probably.
Yeah.
Not always. I mean, definitely not always.
Yes.
Because the box can be built wrong or not built well. But you're never going to be disappointed with the performance of one of our speakers in a loaded enclosure. And, building enclosures for years like I have, I mean, they're really built well. I mean, acoustic fill in almost all of them. I think there's only 2 boxes. We're not even going to ask that because no one's going to dig them. But there are 2 of the enclosures, the TCWRT, which are the passive radiator boxes that don't have acoustic fill. All the rest of them do. It takes a little bit of the output away, like maybe a half a dB, but it tunes them a little bit lower and makes them sound a little smoother. So there's a reason why we do all that. And threaded inserts, none of the speakers are screwed directly into wood. Cross bracing to make sure they're strong. I mean, we parked a truck on one. I mean, we actually parked a truck on one. Yeah. And that was fun. I said something about, hey, I want to park a truck on one of these enclosures. I think I had like 6 or 8 of the engineers were like, hey, we got to see this.
Yeah, let's watch that. There's a video of you doing it.
Yeah, actually, somewhere if you look online, it was one of our enclosures that we do for the vehicle specific that were designed for specific application. People are like, it's a plastic enclosure, it can't be strong. Well, we did, first of all, we jacked up the truck and we set the back wheel on it.
Yeah.
And hey, it took it. It's like, okay, well, let's drive the back wheel on it. So we made a little ramp and drove it up on top. And it's like, okay, that took it. We got to thinking, well, there's not as much weight on the back wheels as they are on the front. So we then put the ramp in front of the truck, drove the front with the engine on an F-150 and set that on the speaker. And once again, it did not affect it. Now, since we're talking enclosures and talking about that, I love the questions. I was even thinking about this today when I was building those boxes for MasterTech. The question, which sounds better, MDF or plywood? And the true answer is, if they make sound, they're wrong. The box should not make any sound. It does not matter what you build an enclosure out of, as long as it's solid and doesn't resonate. I've built them out of aluminum. You look at, Bobby Gately makes them out of plastic, acrylic. They're just absolutely gorgeous. Of course, MDF, plywood. I've seen people make speaker boxes out of concrete. No resonance. In fact, it was one of the competition cars for Iasca back in the 80s. It was an ADS 10-inch woofer, and it was in a concrete enclosure.
Wow.
So as long as they're stiff, it doesn't matter. So, any other questions? What is the effect of having a round dust cap versus a square dust cap? Cosmetics. Doesn't matter at
Good
all.
question.
In fact, some speakers don't even have dust caps. A lot of our drivers, we're actually molding the cone and the dust cap is all one continuous piece. Now, the new Comp Cs are a good example. So those speakers don't have a separate dust cap. It's all one piece. So the dust cap literally is to keep the dust out of the gap. It doesn't matter if it's separate or attached as part of the cone. Doesn't matter the shape of the dust cap. Well, it can. Actually, let's back that up. Of course, I always think of the one exception. If you think about a dust cap on a woofer, you look at the shape of the dust cap, you have convex versus concave. That does change the sound a little bit. We found that out with our old, like when we were talking our ST boxes, which had the horns in them, the original kicker style boxes. We switched from the convex dust caps, which were the Audis, so to speak, to the concave, and they actually roll off frequencies above 500 hertz, a little bit more. You think of the shape of that soft dome tweeter, with that dust cap, but hopefully your woofer's not playing 500 hertz anymore.
Yeah.
Those were basically full range boxes. So they had to play high frequency. So that's one of the things we learned. The shape of that dust cap for that application did actually have a very big effect on sound. So great question. We got a note up there that apparently we're having way too much fun, guys.
Okay.
At least I am. I hope you
All
are.
right, so John,
Steven's got a question.
If you punch in the silk gum tweeter, is it ruined?
It can, yes. The question Stephen asked was, if you punch in the dome on a silk dome tweeter, is it ruined? Well, if it bends the voice coil, if it buckles and bends the voice coil, it rubs, yes, it's ruined. It is going to change the frequency response of the tweeter, because that is a very definite part of it. The funny thing is how we got to the inverted dust caps. And it's kind of funny if you think about it. You know, you go in stores and all people like to push the dust caps in on the speakers.
Oh, gosh.
And they look awful. So where that idea originally came from was going around looking at the woofers, the old Kicker A series, the gold letter woofers in some of the stores. The dust caps were mashed in and they looked terrible. Steve looked at that and said, why didn't I make them that way? Then you can't damage them. So that's really where that came from. So kind of cool.
So we've got some tech questions.
Good, because I need some water. That's all you.
And actually, the first tech question, we already answered it today. It's, can I run L7X subwoofers in sealed enclosures? So as John pointed out earlier, he has done it with great sound quality, great output. It is not recommended, but clearly it works. So
I'd recommend it.
There's your answer.
So yes, it's recommended.
Okay.
I did it and I
John
liked
Myers personally recommends it. The second question is, I have a Key 204 and a set of the new 3-way KSS 369s.
Cool.
That's the 1-inch tweeter, the 2 3/4 inch, and the 6x9 woofer. And the question
is,
is,
started shipping not long ago, didn't it?
yes, yeah, we did a show on those,
Yep.
Jacob and I, or Carlos and I. Can I run this setup in biamp mode with the Key 204? And if so, do I need to use the passive crossovers?
Oh, you're asking me?
Sure, absolutely.
Yes and no. So if you're going to run it in biamp mode, you're going to need to run the passive crossover on the tweeter. Now, the cool thing about the new KS 3-way components is the crossovers are in line. So if you run that in biamp mode, you're going to have the 3.5 or 2 3/4 and the tweeter. You're going to run those in parallel off amp 1. What happens when that amplifier tunes, when you use the microphone, you play pink noise, it's going to hear that that is not just a tweeter connected to it. If it only hears a tweeter, it's going to set the crossover point at 4,500 hertz, 24 dB per octave, high pass, low pass. If it hears anything bigger than a tweeter, like the 2 3/4, 3.5, 4 inch, so forth and so on, it's going to change that crossover point to 320 hertz and up. So that brings more of that soundstage up top. So it will block the bass from the 2 3/4, but you still got to block the lower mid-range from the tweeter. And of course, the woofer is going to get 620 hertz and down by that crossover. So yes, you still want to use the passive crossover on the tweeter only. At least that's the way I do it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to say, only with less detail, because you are John Myers. So next we have fail picks, and John, I think
Was that 3 questions?
that was 2.
Okay.
Yeah, we just had 2.
We stiffed you on a question. We'll make up for it next time.
Fail picks. So, John, actually, no, you didn't send these to me. Ernie sent these to me. So once again, if you see your vehicle in our fail picks, we're not trying to pick on you. We're not making fun of
we
you.
are.
We're just
Indirectly.
laughing together at some of the silly
And hopefully
things.
you'll learn by watching the show. But if you guys have fail picks, send them in, please. I don't care if they're your vehicle or not. They're just fun. That's all we're trying to do.
John, what are we looking at here?
Is that really a power wire running through the steering, passed through the firewall?
Power and ground.
Wow, it's hard to tell because the color's not really
There's
good.
a blue and a red.
Okay, now I see it. I thought that was just one big wire, but don't do that because obviously that steering is going to rub on that and eventually wear through it. So now I can see it. Now that you zoom out, I can see the red and the blue.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, don't do
next.
that.
So this is a whole lot of spray foam.
Yeah, I'm looking at that going, I bet the air conditioning doesn't work in the back anymore.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, that's wonderful. The first time I sprayed some of this into a door, I buckled the panel. So I have to admit that I've seen the power of spray foam.
We had that happen on one of our show vehicles. We built a half truck, which was the cab of a truck, and we had the whole back of the truck, because the cabs are corrugated.
Yeah.
We had the whole back smoothed out with a new panel, and then one of the guys decided to spray it with spray foam, sprayed it, and it buckled the whole thing and completely destroyed all the bodywork, and we had to redo it. So that stuff is powerful, so use it sparingly, and I don't really know a good application in car audio to use spray foam. That's great.
That's a great ground right there. Or is that power? I can't tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, because here's black and red tied together. So, yeah, whatever it is, please don't do that.
So we got two problems. We may have the wrong color wire, and three problems. We have a screw going through the wire, and we don't have anything covering that screw.
John, I'm pretty sure that's the top of a breaker panel right there. One of our wires smoking.
Oh, that's house wiring.
I just realized that. And it's the top of that's 220 volts.
Woo-wee.
That's crazy. I hope you can hear Ernie. Ernie says that's a breaker panel in a house. All the more reasons to be scared because that's 240 volts coming in, not 12. So it's 20 times more voltage and a lot more current.
Wow. Okay, so don't do that in your house or your car. So
Don't put a breaker panel in your car.
now we got some cool picks. So we talked about Lone Star Throwdown that's going to be in Conroe, Texas next weekend. And John will not be there. But this is a pickup. Go ahead and pull this up, Ernie. This is a pickup that was close to our booth at SEMA last November. And John, tell me, was this actually a previous Kicker demo truck?
Yes, I've got, in fact, my DNA is still in that truck.
Please explain.
That truck originally, when we built it, it had four 15-inch L7s, which when I built the enclosure, I bolted the enclosure. It was made out of 4-inch box steel, bolted to the seatbelt bolts, and it actually held the woofers in the center of the port. The port went all the way around the perimeter of the 415, so they looked like they were floating. Travis bought that truck and brought it back to life, and it is absolutely gorgeous. That's going to be at Lone Star Throwdown. The cool thing about that truck is the paint. That's the original paint from when we did it. That was a $32,000 paint job. That truck was airbrushed inside and out. It originally had a motorcycle rack in the back. All the amplifiers were floating in the bed, and I got the whole bed done, and they came up to me and said, hey, we want to put a PlayStation in here.
Sure,
so I had to figure out where to put the PlayStation. Then we had no speakers in the back, so I was being a smart aleck. It's like, why don't we build them into the taillights?
Oh, we have some of those in our studio.
We have, actually, in the back, somehow we have one of the taillights that I built that literally there's two screws. You can pull the taillights out of those. So I got another set of taillights from the dealership, put a ring on there and fiberglass the coax speakers in. So now you could have the PlayStation with the TV and use the taillight speakers when you're ready to go. Pull those out, put the taillights back in. So kind of fun, just kind of doing something different. But yeah, that was a gorgeous truck, and Travis and the guys did an incredible job putting that thing. I think it's got 11 12s in it or something like that. It's crazy, but that's going to be at the booth at Lone Star Throwdown, so come check that truck out. Oh, and we did it, by the way, it was jacked up.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was setting on 38-inch tires, chrome wheels, Colorado Custom wheels. It was cool. And now it's slam. So, it's been repurposed, and I'd say for the better. I like it.
So this is an MTI enclosure, And if you know
Who's
MTI, who's MTI?
Yeah.
I don't know what it stands for.
Mobile Toys Incorporated.
Oh,
Those
okay.
are our buddies down in Texas, Chris Bate and Jim Skaggs. Those guys do absolutely gorgeous enclosures. So get on their website. They're not cheap, but nothing built well and of quality is cheap, but they're well worth it. So look at the craftsmanship, the design.
Yeah, the detail. Jeez.
All I can say is thank God for CNC machines, because that would not be fun mass producing those without it. But gorgeous enclosures, and they have many different levels of enclosures also. So check out the guys at MTI if you're looking for under-the-seat truck boxes. They do a lot of other things as well. They do some absolutely unbelievable installs. And if you guys were at MasterTech last year, you saw one of the trucks that they did was just gorgeous. In fact, at Lone Star Throwdown too, there'll be several of their vehicles. That's kind of in their backyard. So very cool.
This next one, Ernie had to tell me what this was. John, do you know what this is? Ernie, throw it up, please.
Put it on the TV. If you can't tell, the TV's over here. That looks like it. Tater?
Tater. Yeah,
That's funny.
I had to ask Ernie, what is Tater? Bill.
That wasn't Ron White's vehicle, was it? Tater Tot?
So this is a Jeep, and this is a beautiful install. So this is obviously the back of the Jeep opened up. And you got our KMTC 6-inch dual unloaded enclosure,
I think the 6s and the 9s. It's hard to tell from the picture.
Well, if you take a look right here.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
okay, you're right.
It's our dual enclosure.
It is the 6.5s.
And then this is the subwoofer with a plexiglass window. Let me get it. There we go. So
Nice.
there you can see inside the
Oh,
enclosure.
that looks like it's
Gorgeous.
from the 80s.
Yes, it does.
With all the drizzle paint.
Yes.
Actually, I had a car that we did that on the inside of the trunk lid and the hood. We did the drizzle paint like that. And it was actually kind of cool.
It does look nice.
Especially when it lights up, it's all neon.
And those are the Q-Class 15s. And then on the inside of the Jeep, of course, she's got the Street Series. So the Street Series mids, and then in the roll bar.
So if you need a haircut,
Yeah, very, very nice
a
install.
lot of work in that.
And Tater is going to be in Lone Star Throwdown
Nice.
next weekend. She not in our booth,
This weekend.
but this weekend. Excuse me, this weekend. Not in our booth, but she is going to be there with her Jeep. So definitely take a look at that if you're going to be in the area at the show. So that is all the images we have, and we have one more thing to show. So John, you ran through the L7T, how it's built. So we are introducing and shipping today our newest L7T preloaded enclosures, which are truck specific. So we're going to run over here and show you.
We're running?
Well, we're gonna sashay.
Nobody
we're gonna
warned me about
saunter.
this
We're gonna
one.
mosey over here, and we're gonna show you. Oh, Stephen, are we on this one here? Okay, we got. So, and we're gonna show you these new loaded enclosures.
The headless Aaron is showing you the enclosure.
So the L7T, this version here is for the F-150, and it is two L7T 10-inch drivers. It is down firing, so put it down like this. So when you put the seat down, this is all you're going to see from the front of the seat, and then there's a logo on the side. It's very discreet, nice looking
That
logo.
logo is machined metal. It's not plastic.
It is beautiful.
Are you able to lift that, Aaron?
No, I'm not going to go any further with it. So this one is for the F-150, and then this is for the GMC, Sierra, and Silverado, as Carlos says, Silverado. And this is also down firing, but it has enough airspace for 12s. So it's actually got the L7T 12-inch in it. And so this is also shipping now. Oh, 2 ohms of the terminal cup, in case you're wondering out there.
I saw a lot of pallets of those in the warehouse this afternoon.
Fantastic product.
Look at the craftsmanship. I mean, you can't see a seam. The seams are all tucked into that little ridge around the side. I mean, they are built extremely well. And that's got 12. So you're looking at 1,200 watts power handling RMS and 1,000 watts on the Ford box, and there's one more.
The Ram box is not yet ready, so that's not yet available. It is coming. So if you've got a Ram
Figures
pickup,
that's the one I want.
yeah, John has to wait some more. So the Ram is coming, but right now these two are available. So that's the GM version and the Ford version shipping now. They're not on our website, but they will be there probably tomorrow morning once we reset overnight. However, these will be in your retailers probably tomorrow or the next day.
Do you remember the retail price point?
I do not.
I think it's $899 on the Chevy and then $799 on the Ford and the Dodge.
That's fantastic.
Since they're 10-inch. So great value, really great value.
CXA 1201 would be the ideal amplifier for either of these. So that would be a hot setup. However, I did hear these, actually I think, John, you heard it too. One of our guys here, Joe Gross, he's got one of the prototypes in his pickup, and he's got a Key 501, and it absolutely hammers. And shocking amount of output.
That's what we just did last week. We did the demo with one of the Ford boxes with the 501. And if you think about it, that's still only 300 watts to those.
Yeah.
Because the 501 produces 500 watts at 1 ohm, produces 300 watts at 2 ohms. So literally a third of what those woofers will really handle, because that's 300 watts to both of them split up. That's 150 per woofer.
Yeah, it's unbelievable output.
And deep, I mean, you talk about good bass from those. I mean, I love that L7T woofer. I mean, I've got it in 2 of my vehicles.
Yes. In fact, John, correct me if I'm wrong, this is your current favorite woofer.
Yeah, not current and has been for a couple of years now. You know, for the money and the performance, you can't beat the L7T woofer. And the one we have up here on the table, this one's half off right now. So.
Yeah, that's great.
It only handles half the power, though.
All right, so those are the new enclosures. They're shipping now. I didn't get those. I'm getting a message.
Yeah, Ernie, do you have them?
They're in my email.
Go check your email. So
okay,
we've got pictures of Steve Barber's Las Vegas Showdown. So if you guys are going to be in Las Vegas or near Las Vegas this weekend, go check out the Showdown, which is sponsored by us. I think Aaron's going to be there. Aaron Surratt, which he's been on the show a couple of times. Our one and only Bill Frog will be there, and Steve's drawing, I don't know what kind of pictures he's drawing. Don't forget he draws an elephant.
Oh, elephant. Good. Yeah, forget. Okay. So checking my email, don't have the pictures, but the Lone Star Throwdown, since we're talking about that, and that's actually in PIM. Is that correct?
Prim.
Prim.
No, it's the Las Vegas Showdown.
But it's
Lone Star Throwdown is Texas this weekend.
Yeah,
We knew you were going to get that backwards.
Ooh, I did.
The Las Vegas Showdown, Lone Star Throwdown.
But Steve
And
Barber.
that's the lowdown.
Yeah, Steve Barber's the lowdown. No, Steve Barber's the throwdown. Whew.
Throwdown, the lowdown, and the showdown.
Man, there's too much going on here. So I don't have those images, Ernie. Okay, all right, I believe you. I just don't see you.
It's going to be a good time. It's just outside of Vegas and Prim. I was at that show last year, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's
good weather too.
Yep. And,
so
and you know, if you're bored, there's 2 casinos right there too.
If you're bored and rich. Last week we did the Miami Boat Show. Real quick, want to mention that because Carlos was at the show last week with a bunch of other kicker people, and we had a fantastic showing out there. And if you've ever had a chance to do the Miami Boat Show, yachts as far as the eye can see. So it's an incredible show to witness some really amazing boats. Not just yachts, but there's just some great pleasure boats, some working boats, and everything in between.
Also coming up, we've got Catfest and Desert Storm, which are 2 other boating events in Lake Havasu. And there's guys out there that bring their own chase helicopters for their boats. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars. I mean, it's the most gross waste of money and so cool. It's just, I was walking around there with just like, wow. I mean, everything painted to match. The boat's painted to match the trailer. It's painted to match the truck. That's painted to match their ATV. And then they've got the remote control boat and the helicopter, all painted to match. So they got probably several $100,000 in just paint.
Unbelievable.
But it's cool.
So those are the events coming up. Let's give away some prizes. Bill, are you ready?
Did we get the pictures yet?
No, I don't have pictures yet. So, Bill, do you have prizes for us, or winners, I should say? The first, second, third. So third place winner, you get the EB400s, the 2 koozies, and a T-shirt, unmasked T-shirt. So do we have a third place winner?
I hope so.
Pulling up. There we go. Number 3, Sean M. from Indiana. Congratulations, Sean. You are winner number 3. EB400s, 2 koozies, and a T-shirt. So winner number 2. Winner number 2 gets the TW2. That's our new in-ear.
Randy G. from Alabama.
Randy G.
Is that
I speculated it was Randy Goodwin, but I don't think it is Randy Goodwin.
Well, if that is Randy Goodwin, I know you went through some medical issues, and I'm glad you're doing much better now. So he was a good friend of ours and still is. So good guy in the industry.
You are the second place winner. You get the TW2, which is our new in-ear monitors. Fantastic
really?
product. Yes, that's the new
We're
second
out
place.
of those, I thought.
Well, we have a stash here.
I
in the
figured
studio.
somebody probably put some back.
Yes.
For this reason. And those things are great. I love them on airplanes.
First place winner, you get the
Dun, 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 dun.
BF100. Who is our first place winner tonight? Jake P. from Indiana. Congratulations,
Indiana's
Jake.
a hot place tonight for winners.
Do we have two from Indiana?
Oh, Alabama, Indiana,
Yeah.
they rhyme.
They're sort of close.
I failed geography.
Same continent. So thank you all for
Yeah, there
playing
you
and
go.
winning. And
There we are.
Yes, tonight. Oh, there we go.
There are the pictures.
Wow. I have lost count of how many ST.
You know, I think I showed pictures of that not long ago on the show, but I think he's got 8 of the 9s in each front door, and then there's 4 on each side, and I think there's 2 more firing forwards.
And those are 15s.
Yeah, so it's got 9 15s, so that thing is going to be
Wow.
stupid loud. I still love the work of the seats. That edge laid, birch plywood, the way it's done. It's just really. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
Do we have the
So-
steering wheel in there?
Well, he does, yeah.
Got a
The
picture
steering
of
wheel
that?
is actually an L7 woofer. We showed that one too.
Oh,
but
did you? Okay.
It is
All right.
such a cool vehicle.
Thank you, Steve, for that amazing demo vehicle.
So are we about done?
We are about
I still
done.
got some boxes to build
I know,
and
you
back.
still got stuff to do. And Andy is not having a show tonight. He needs a night off, so Andy will not be doing his show tonight. However, next week, Andy is going to be back online, and he's dynoing a CXA 1801. So if you want to see a dyno of a CXA 1801, check out Andy's show next Tuesday, 7:30. And Andy will be running the Kicker Show on the Andy Show. Is that
Dynoing,
right?
is that prehistoric?
I don't know.
Dynoing?
I don't know.
Dinosauring?
We'd have to
Never
ask
mind.
an authority of some sort.
That was a stretch.
So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here tonight. We appreciate your time and your attendance, and thank you, John, for being our special guest.
No problem.
Mr. Know everything about L7T.
Make
how
it
to
up as
build
I
a
go.
speaker.
I only know because I talked to the best people that told me about it.
We are surrounded by experts. Thank you, guys. We'll see you in 2 Tuesdays. Good night.